there's a movement and a position in pummeling I think that's really crucial to feel comfortable with. And that involves being able to trap one side of the body up top with the arm, so you're controlling the upper body, and as well as controlling the lower body. And typically, how I'm going to control the lower body is having my ankle to ankle and knee to knee, and my hips will be in tight as well, so that there'll be a lot of contact here. There's a bunch of grips now I'm going to go over. I'm not going to go into the actual throw. We're going to do that in the throwing instructional. But to get into this position initially is crucial, and to understand that while there's a number of positions that set this type of throw up, and I'll demonstrate that once for now, the basic notion is I'm going to control his arm, his head, and his leg. And the grips are only variations on that, but the principle is all pretty much the same. The situation I'm going to go to is as we're pummeling here, I'm going to come into this position here. I'm going to go knee to knee. I'm not lifting up now. I'm sagging here, and I'm just going to come down to the mat. Now, there's several grips, and that's basically the point that I want to get across right now. We'll deal more with the throwing aspect and the technique for that in another instructional. But I'm controlling the upper body and the lower body, and my grips are going to be variable, but accomplishing basically the same goal. The first one, as I'm pummeling, is going to be an over and under situation. What I'm going to do is, as we slide in, I'm going to step ankle to ankle, knee to knee. I'm going to be down tight here. My hips are going to be in. My knee's going to be in. This side here, I want you to notice, is not down. I want it up. And I want you to notice, too, I don't want to be exactly in front of Colby chest to chest. I'm going to be almost perpendicular. He's going to be almost perpendicular to me. Almost. This is down. There's a lot of weight loaded up on this leg. This arm is up, not down. Up. I'm looking where I'm going to fall or throw to. I stay rigid. I want to not sag down too much here as I throw. I'm loading him up here as far as his weight is concerned, but when I actually fall, I'm going to be stretching him out now as I come down. And I'm going to be looking where I'm going. So I'm stretching him out. When I initially come in, I load the weight up, and then as I fall, I'm pulling him up on my body, still blocking his knee with my knee, his ankle with my ankle, and I'm looking to where I'm going. The crucial thing is that I'm loading the weight up initially, that I'm not chest to chest like this, I'm to the side. And notice when I got the grip, simultaneously I'm making the step. Ankle to ankle, knee to knee. Also notice my body is not exactly upright, but I'm leaning because I'm going to continue that momentum down to the mat. Once more. I am almost, from here, I'm almost leaning slightly backwards and to the side, although I'm looking to where I'm going, and I'm jacking that far side arm up. And that's where I'm going to have my throw, ultimately. We're going to go over the basic mechanics of that later. But for now, just notice that grip. Now, I have other grips that I can get in a similar type of situation, or at least will allow a similar type of throw. Another position that I like a lot is the overhook and grabbing the head. If I'm digging in and Colby underhooks me on both sides, one option I have is to come to this position here. I'm going to get that same overhook as I did on the initial setup that we had. But I wasn't able to get the underhook side. Colby beat me to the underhook side. He beat me to it, so as he digs, I make it difficult, and that's when I step. I bring his head tight to my chest here, my shoulder. I load up all the weight on this side. And again, when I grab him, I don't want to be squishing him down here like this. I want to be picking him up high, picking his head up high as my body stays kind of low. That's important. On all these type of throws, I'm stretching him up across my body. I'm not trying to jack his weight down this way. I'm not putting his weight down here and trying to get his body low relative to mine. The lower I get my body relative to his, the better. So we're pummeling in here. Colby pummels in, and I can't come in. I just step here. And you'll notice I'm off balance there. Okay, I didn't throw it, I bailed out. But my point is when I get in that position, I'm not exactly neutral here. When we actually do the throw, it's going to be with continuous motion. And that momentum, and that's what's going to help you be successful with that throw. A nice attack from pummeling is if I'm able to make it very difficult, so he really pushes in, and I'm also making it difficult for him to come in on this side. One option I have is to come through on a throw from this direction. And as he's pushing in, I'm making it difficult here. And this is especially true if I feel like I'm able to continue to kind of push into him and I'm not retreating. He's pushing back into me. This is a very difficult type of movement to get. But as we're pummeling here, if I come through, I feel this come through, and I'm going to come down here. Sometimes when your opponent is able to muscle you around, perhaps they're stronger than you, and you're finding yourself having to retreat or giving ground, there's a point where instead of just pushing in and losing that contest, it's important to be able to give away a little bit. And a technique that I think is helpful is Colby's pushing into me here. If I'm retreating, what I'm going to do now is I want to change directions, because right now Colby is pushing me, and he may push me off the mat. In wrestling, I may get called for stalling. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to set things up as well backing up as I can when I'm moving forward. So what I'm going to do is I want to change direction on Colby. I do that by giving a tug on the underhook side. And when I say tug on the underhook side, I'm going to get as much friction as I can with my hand on his upper back. I'm not going to grab like a little piece of his lat here. I'm going to grab here on his back. I'm going to make a lot of contact with my forearm, with my bicep here. Everything's going to have a lot of contact with his body. From here, I'm going to lock his shoulder to my shoulder. His shoulder to my shoulder here when I pull in. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to rotate. Now notice if Colby's pushing along this line here, if Colby's pushing and I can turn him around, then all of a sudden I've changed direction. Even though our momentum was going in that direction, all of a sudden instead of backing up, I'm walking forward. I'm pushing Colby. Now reality, that's not going to be sufficient for that task. What I want to do to help myself is, as Colby's pushing into me here, I'm going to turn. I'm also going, and torque on this underhook side, I'm going to pop this elbow into his shoulder here. And I want you to watch what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to push this. If I'm not grabbing it, I'm going to push it up like this. I push it up along this axis, watch, up here, like that. From here, I'm just going to push this like this. At the same time, I'm rotating. Notice if I rotate here and I push here, that's going to help transition him around. Simultaneously, tugging and pushing. Now, even that is likely to be insufficient. So what I'm going to do is as I tug and push, I'm going to step. And I'm going to block his foot. So I'm doing 4 things at once here. I'm tugging, pushing that elbow into his shoulder, It's going to pop him sort of towards his chin here. At the same time, I'm stepping with the elbow push side and blocking his instep here. Not trying to kick it or sweep it. I'm just blocking it here. Why am I blocking it? Because I don't want him to step. I want him to rotate around this foot, so all the weight's going to be on that foot. The other thing I want you to notice is I'm not going to be exactly vertical here when I do this. I'm going to be stepping here, and I'm going to be at an angle somewhat backward, and I'm going to rotate my body like this. I want you to notice the angle of my body. I'm not exactly vertical. I'm at an angle here. Colby pushes into me. Now, he may not go down. In all likelihood, he's probably just going to swing around, but I'm going to continue the momentum. And I got myself in a more precarious position where I'm getting pushed backwards here to where all of a sudden I'm the aggressor. And I'll be able to set up some attacks from that position, especially if I can recognize that I've transitioned from backing up to a forward moving position. I'm going to be able to initiate some attacks. So Colby is pummeling in here, and he's pushing into me, and I block him down. The harder your opponent is pushing into you, the easier this will work. Also, too, the element of surprise is important because the more they're committed to pushing into you, they're going to go flying. If they're kind of aware that you like this type of technique, a lot of times people will be a little bit more cautious and reticent about pushing in hard. But if you can get a good reaction out of them, this is very effective, particularly if they're overtaking you in that pummeling position to where you're having to retreat. Now, one thing that's important and it makes this a little easier, and that is I want to jack Colby up high up on my body. Just like in this type of a throwing situation here where I was just going over the grips. I don't want to have his body low like this when I throw him. I want to bring it up high relative to my body. I also want to bring Colby up high relative to my body. And this technique when I can, or at least as high as I can. So, for example, if his body is lower here, it's much more difficult. Notice where his body is relative to mine, height-wise. It's much more difficult for me to attack this type of a technique here. Alternatively, from here, when I step in and get at that angle here, and I can kind of like shift him up as I step in, that's going to make it a lot easier. I want to like pull him up on my body slightly, even though reality is he's not going to go up but maybe an inch or two. Stretching him out like that makes a big difference in terms of your ability to get him around you. So if I'm here and Colby's pushing into me, what I want to do, push in. If Colby's pushing into me here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to step and go here. I want to try to pull him up as best as I can here. Naturally, once I've changed directions here, and I've changed directions, that's a very opportune time for me to initiate an attack. Okay, that's a very good time for me to initiate a good, strong attack. And that's regardless whether it's a more grappling situation or a mixed martial arts situation. You're going forward, your opponent's going backwards. You just pulled him off balance, so he's having to gather his wits and recover in terms of his position. Now, sometimes your opponent has an underhook. Perhaps we're pummeling. Colby comes to an underhook position here, and he's no longer pummeling. Again, he knows enough to be able to transition to various positions. He's got a great position of advantage here, having an underhook and also controlling my wrist here. I'm in a vulnerable position here. One way I can get out of the underhook that I like, that I think is relatively effective, although Colby does have much better position than I do here, and he definitely has the advantage. But what I'll do is quickly grab his head with my forearm, not with my hand, with my forearm. I'm going to try to get his head squozen between my forearm and my bicep. And then I'm going to put the side of his head glued to my chest here. So I'm going to come here. Notice that's ear to my chest, not forehead to my chest. I'm going to reach across here and grab here, and notice side of his head is to my chest. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate my body. It's hard for me just with my arm to move his head. His neck is probably pretty strong. It's attached to his upper body. That's going to be difficult. But if I latch on to him here and I rotate with my whole upper body, I have an opportunity for an underhook. Colby has transitioned to an underhook here, especially like if he's pushing, he's probably got much better push power than me here. I'm going to grab here. Notice, it's not to my head. I grab to my chest here. I come across, and I get the underhook now. As I rotate my body, I'm not using my I'm not going to use my arm power here. My arm power is simply to latch him to my chest. Then it's my chest movement rotating around the axis of my spine that's going to move his upper body, and that's going to make a little space here I'm going to take advantage of to get an underhook. Now I get the underhook from that position. So, I pin Colby's head to my head. This happens most typically with an underhook position where Colby, and naturally, Colby can push better with his underhook than I can with my overhook. Okay, he's in a better position mechanically here. So most typically, I'm getting defeated in this position and I'm having to retreat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab his head quickly, rotate, and get my head to his deltoid, slide it up to his neck, get wrist control or hand control here. Now I have the underhook. Once more, again, this is, I think, a fairly effective way to get out of an underhook. That being said, Colby still has the advantage in an underhook, but this, I think, is one of the better type techniques to be able to defend. Notice, if he has an underhook, most of the time, if we're pushing here, I'm going to pop in his head hard. He's going to be defeating me as far as the pushing power here. I grab, and I get my underhook on this side. Of course, my specialty is grappling and wrestling and not stand-up. But for the people that are inclined as far as stand-up type position, there's a lot, obviously, you can be transitioning here between foot stomps and knees, being able to break away and to punch. Also, too, notice, when we talked about before changing direction, so if we're up in here and we might be kneeing each other or moving each other around, if I can change direction here, that's a very good time for me to transition to some other type of attacks over and above more traditional wrestling type attacks. Because again, I was in a vulnerable position backing up. All of a sudden, now I'm moving forward and my opponent is off balance moving up. That's an opportune time to strike.